So let's call the meeting to order for the work session. Let's start with the 2020 general fund budget. Mr. Merrick.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So typically we'll go over a draft of the truth and taxation presentation prior to the actual truth and taxation presentation with the council at a work session, just to see if it's in line with your thinking of what you recall. So we haven't gone through this for several weeks, if not months. And there are some tweaks that I wanted to share with you. We're not necessarily looking for the council to say, yes, we support the number, because you'll be voting on that later on in the year. But if there are additional pieces of information or clarification that you need prior to the presentation being given to the public, we're happy to take that. So the first piece is why we do truth and taxation. So it's probably within the next week or two, Carver County will be sending out, if they haven't already, a truth and taxation statement. So that'll show the preliminary levies for the city, Carver County, Eastern Carver County schools, and then a variety of other like smaller taxing districts. And so truth and taxation is an opportunity for folks to go to each of those meetings. So each of the entities will have its own public hearing where folks can ask questions about the budget and how taxes impact their overall budget. And so this is a copy of the statement last year. So what we'll do is we'll take, once those tax statements are put out, we'll put the 2020 in here and get into the part of what valuation is, that upper right hand corner where the box around it. A lot of times folks will end up coming to the meeting wanting to question their market value and taxation. Grab that. They'll question their value, and really the discussion here is for the levy. And so we always have this slide in here that if someone is questioning or concerns about their value, they can contact the Carver County Auditor's Office. Contact information is below. And then the second piece is really that hearing area. So then here we'll update the 2020. I think one of the things that I think we understand quite a bit from just working with it is that each of these entities is responsible for their own budget. But when you get it all on one bill, in essence, think of them as all one and looking at the bottom line. But in a lot of ways, this is like getting your cable, XL, and CenterPoint bill all on one. Each business, or in this case, government agency, will have 15, so you can see, of course, on the right-hand side, where each of those taxing districts have their own hearing. Here's some of the meat and potatoes where we left from September. So we moved the JC landscape, the general budget, $15,000 earlier in the year. That also approved a loan from the sanitary sewer fund to fund the landscape planning, but also to plan the various other planning pieces that we're expecting to coincide with the Jonathan Carver Parkway project. So that's preliminary design on the local streets that we're doing, some sanitary sewer work, and some storm sewer work. We also prorated the community service cost, all benefiting funds. So that's a $15,000 cost, assigned 50% to the general fund, and then 20%, 15 and 10 to corresponding to water and storm, since we'd be asking questions related to our utilities. In response to the proposed dedication plan and Parks Master Plan, increased that contribution from the general fund from just around $60,000 to $17,000. As I had mentioned previously, our janitorial that position resigned. Right now we have hired through the end of the year cleaning service for just City Hall. But the 2019 budget plans to do that throughout the year, and then have the janitorial kind of more transition into kind of a building maintenance position where they're working on building maintenance items, whether it's painting, small repairs, etc. They'd also be doing janitorial work in the Church by the River Fire Station and Carver Station. professional services and planning, $5,000 add just to cover some needs on leave in the community development department. Spring, Prime and Prime MD. We think that's probably a little bit of an aggressive push right there. We're probably not going to reach 15,000. The view that we took is we didn't want to be in a position where it was being spent to, let's say, we had it budgeted at 11,000 and we hit that number in October, and then we had a group coming to say, hey, can you add another 4,000 to the budget? So it's a plan for growth of use. Prime MD was introduced just in October. Prime really even hasn't been in the city for a full year under kind of our new situation, and so we're still trying to figure that out. And then as a means to try to mitigate some of the levy impact, we're including a special capital project fund contribution to lessen the levy impact of $25,000. And so what that means is an overall reduction in the general levy of just under 15,000, the overall levy by a corresponding amount, which drops the levy increase over 2019 to under 12% to 11.9. Property on average for a home that's at 300,000 would go down by 37,000. That'd be great. You get money back.
Yeah.
By $37 now. That's really I would say probably one of the more complex things about how property taxes work is the value of your home. So depending upon the neighborhood that you live in, home sales in the area, whether or not you did a building addition, remodel your kitchen, finish your basement, where your home is valued, how as it relates to where it was valued previous is really going to be kind of specific to where you live or your home or your neighborhood. Which gets me to point number 5, which is on average, most homes are going to experience just over 10% increase in value. And so if your home was valued at $300,000 last year, on average, that'll have gone up by about 10%. And so if you look at the property taxpayer, the value of the home, under that scenario, your taxes would go up by $125 with this budget. And then getting into, this is what the council has gone through, but it'll be helpful for residents, those watching, to get into the general fund. Explain that property taxes make up about 80% of the general fund. The balance is from state aid, permits, fees, and fines, and you can see all the areas within kind of the general fund that are covered. What you don't see are the enterprise fund, we refer to as the water, sanitary, sewer, and storm enterprise. They really function as their own business, and so the monthly utility bill and the new development connections are the primary sources of revenue. And so although as an operation we do those pieces, the revenue and expenditures and how they operate are really separate entities. Our general process, we really kind of start building that budget in the summer. We have a series of work sessions with the council throughout the summer and into the fall. The council sets that preliminary levy on September 16th, which sets the maximum tax amount. So in essence, you're setting the budget for the budget, so how much you're willing to take from taxes. And then through October and November, we look at budget conditions. So that's one of the steps that we're taking tonight. The truth and taxation statements will be coming out later this month. And then on the 2nd, so your next meeting, we'll be holding a truth and taxation hearing. And then there are some cities, and we've done this in the past too, where they'll consider adopting the budget at that same meeting on the 2nd. But based on some feedback and just kind of based on process, I feel like it's a better step to take that feedback in one night and then sit on that and then take action on the budget and the levy at your final meeting. So if there's something that you want to consider as far as changes go or feedback from residents, a more deliberate process than taking that and then taking action on the very next agenda item. Just big picture items, this $14 million in new construction value, and so that's something that we're going to be seeing quite a bit as the years go by, as we are gonna, you might be in a position where you're increasing the levy, but you're gonna have more people, more roads, more services to provide, so that construction value and how it relates to the levy are gonna be critical pieces. Again, residential market values increased by 10%. We have new debt service from the 2019 street project, as well as the equipment certificate, which is for the fire truck and the associated public works equipment. No new staffing, or no new full-time staffing is proposed within the 2020 budget. And then some revenue pieces that we've covered. Probably the most significant is the local government aid. We're anticipating new health insurance to be strong. Property tax is account for approximately 78%, and again, rates from water, sanitary sewer, and storm are not included in the general fund. So just a round overview, somewhat significant. We've typically been right around 80%, and so under this scenario, we've dropped to 78%, which I know isn't like a huge step, but it is a step nonetheless in a direction of not being so reliant on property taxes. I don't recognize that it's 78%, but it's been consistently at 80 or 81 the last several years. And then 2020 draft expenditures. Here you can see the breakout by debt service, and later on in the presentation I get into what that debt service is. That's a change from our past presentations. I thought it might be helpful to kind of segregate what that is as opposed to just saying debt service or loan payments, of giving residents an idea of what is made up of that, other than just thinking of it as 2010 refunding and 2020 tax relief. And so we have a payoff strategy right now that's in place where you can see that $235,000 payment, but when we get to 2022, it drops down to $82,000. So in order to provide some additional property tax or levy relief, we've made that more of a static payment rather than kind of the two higher and then the dip, which will help out in 2021, but it'll be higher in 2022, and then the debt service falls off in 23. So it's a strategy where you're helping to even out that debt service payment at $50,000. So you could certainly add that. It would be more difficult now because we'd have to do $50,000 worth of cuts in order to break that level down. You can see the breakdown of our debt service. So that 2010 refunding is the street equipment certificate. Really a big piece of having that fire station come off. In 2021, we have the Levi Griffin Road debt service come off. Based on some analysis that we had, we have from the taxes that mills pay that'll go into the coffers, if you will, cover that debt service, so there won't be an adverse impact to residents as it relates to Levi Griffin Road. That said, if we can be in a position where some of those properties that have deferred assessments on them come in and pay that, it'll in essence be a windfall to the general fund, because it'll take that debt service off and repay the debt service on that project. An estimated debt allowance is something that the council had asked for, so this is our best guess based on what I think our debt service might be. The $275,000 for Jonathan Carver Parkway. As we get more into 2020, we'll be working with Baker Tilly, which was previously Springstead, Paul Steinman's group. Once Dan and his group from Bolton and Mink have established a better budget, or a budget for that project, we can really get into what that service will look like. But again, that would be 2022 budget, so you're not going to be contemplating as a primary budget item for next year's budget. Our history of debt service, you can see the big increase in 2019. That's associated with the City Hall project, and then our debt service over time. And then a couple areas within the general fund as far as specifics. So we're continuing to provide contracted services to Dahlgren, Francisco townships. The 2020 budget does reflect the fire engine. Excuse me. The debt service for that fire engine is approximately $67,000, and then you can see a increase to the pension and the on-call and training pay for firefighters. Law enforcement, we had the sheriff's office earlier that talked about the change in service model. So the budget reflects a 2.0 FTE, so essentially the day car and the evening car, with an increase of just under 45. So we have a contract for city council consideration. I've been sitting on it until we get some feedback as far as like this, what the is going to be. So I am anticipating that we'll put the enforcement agreement on your December 16th council agenda right after the budget is adopted in whatever form you consider action on the law enforcement agreement. Community survey. Again, this is something that was related to the strategic plan. The anticipated cost is $15,000, but again, that's prorated, so there's a $7,500 hit to the general fund to cover that. There was an overview of that process that was provided. I think there's various feedback that the council received from communities that have gone through that. So if that is something that is within the 2020, I think we'd invite everybody out to maybe talk again about maybe specifics of that if we reach. Insurance, this is all stayed the same, anticipating a 12% increase to employee health insurance, deductibles at $5,000 and $2,500 with premium coverage staying the same. Excluding employee benefits is provided through the Minnesota City's Insurance Trust. Other employee related will be into a new party in 2020 with a increase for both union and non-union, and the 2019 budget maintains staffing levels for full-time employees. Recreation services agreement, the 2020 budget reflects the same costs related to the city had in 2019. To verify that with the city, that they're okay with doing that. Recently, the participation hosted that happened. The participation Chaska Parks and Rec at their last meeting, and Aaron Parks Commission, along with support from Brenda Good, will be working on developing a new agreement for the city council to consider in 2020. Southwest Prime and contracted service by Southwest Transit, adopted by the council in 2019. We had $10,000 allocated for 2019 via budget amendment. We're averaging approximately $750 a month, so $9,000 annually. I said previously, the $15,000 is probably a tish on the aggressive side, so that's a strategy, something that the council has feedback on. We're certainly going to take that in and make adjustments as you see fit. Some budget choices. This is a slide that the council has seen previously. One of the items that we've taken since the Lions, I think if you recall, donated $5,000 for holiday decoration, so that was taken off. But you can see some of the various other items that weren't included. And then items that were included: the recreation partnership, full-time evening patrol, spring cleanup, community survey. So history. So this is, if you remember, two things that make up the total levy. It's the debt service levy and the general levy. So we're at 8.8% on the general levy. So you see that over time. And then our total levy history. So this is a change from what you saw with the preliminary levy that was adopted in September. And then our total levy over time. So that's a combination of general and debt service. And so then all that, the levy ends up, in essence, forming what we come up with the tax rate. So we send in our levy, so debt service in general to the county for the total. They in essence do the math and look the number into market value. So that's the classification of all the properties, residential, commercial, industrial, and come up with a rate. And so you can see here what our rates are, our values are, and you can see the number is what we've taken in for new construction. And it will be a really critical number for us to follow as these developments continue on. So we'll see the building permits occur this year, but we won't likely see that added for probably another 2 years. And so we're always that far behind. And so just a good piece of information to inform you of what to expect as we move forward. So you can see our history. As you can see, we were at 49.59 with the preliminary. The change dropped that to 49.31. So in essence, about an $8 change. So here you can see how that relates to actual taxes. Sometimes when you talk about tax rates, it seems a little wonky. So this is based on a $300,000 home. They would pay for the taxes. How that relates to our peers and the other cities in Carver. And there, these are rounded, and say that there are some cities that have a different tax rate. There's what's called a market value tax capacity. Some cities will fund a building, for instance, the station on market value, and so this is this tax capacity. So Chanhassen and maybe one city that have a market value tax capacity, what's also added regular tax capacity, but it felt like that got a little weedy. I just kept it with this same piece, but it follows true to form that Chanhassen and Shasta are the lowest by capacity rates within the county, and New Germany being the highest.
Can you go back? There was a column that had percentages. So that's, but just the we were.
Yep. So that number is our whatever the council divided into the taxable market value for the city. So here's an example. So for pay 19, a $300,000 home gets a homestead exclusion program of $10,200. So their taxable market value is the $289,000. The classification rate for a residential home is 1%. Gets you the tax capacity of $2,800, and then that's multiplied by whatever the local jurisdiction rate is, which gets you the 66. So for pay 20, based on the tax rate that we've calculated, you see that number at 1429, and you can see for a home that stayed at the same value, it would be a $37 drop. I don't have estimates of how many homes stayed at the same value, but one of the provide an information that we'll have by the second is we like to do of different homes from different neighborhoods. So you can see how the tax levy impacted different valued homes in the community. And so here you can see the change if someone had that increase and their value up by just over 2%, their taxes at $1,591, so that's where the change gets you at $125 of an increase. So one of the things that we have done for the last few years, and we amended this slightly, is look at property taxes in the form of a monthly bill. So for that $300,000, roughly $1,429, $19 per month, and rated into the areas that maybe people can follow. And so the changes that I did in the preliminary levy is I separated the top repairs, the street improvement projects and equipment. New City Hall was a combined number, and I think people are really interested in what they're paying for City Hall. Segregated that out, and then wanted a hall building too. The $21 a bit of that is 2019 street project, 2017 to 2018 to 2013. So that includes, all the downtown work, the bridges. And so there's quite a bit into that. So I think this provides a little bit of a better picture of where your money's going on a monthly basis.
And that equipment is not the scope and fire protection, that's for just the fire truck.
Yep, it would be the equipment that you borrowed money for against it.
And the
equipment
things for-
certificate. So it would include the fire engine.
Public services.
Yep,
New
or
equipment, okay.
the new equipment they had, or I think it was 2 years ago, was $300,000 for 2 new plow trucks. All that's encapsulated within that.
So new equipment over the last recent few years.
It's
That
equipment
right
that
to
you
say.
borrowed money for, that wasn't
Okay.
a cash outlay. And then this is the example that we used last year, so you can see, the far left column is the estimated market value, the middle green column is how much that home went up in value, so you can even see there at the fourth line down, home was valued at $289,000. In 2018 and 2019, it went up to 302, and you can see the different ebbs and flows there. The one to the top, it went from 228.9 to 232. So it's not always by the same percentage, but then you can see on the far right, what the changes were for city property taxes. And last year being kind of an outlier in that the new city hall debt was placed on, so you see some bigger numbers there. So that'll wrap up the presentation, and then at that point, the mayor would ask the public to provide any questions, comments related to the proposed levy. So my hope for tonight was to run through it with you, and if there are areas that you think need more clarification, information that you think would be helpful, then I take that and then I can amend it. Because what I like to do in fairly short order is take this presentation and start pushing it out there via our social media platforms, so people can see it and maybe ask some questions in advance of the December 2nd meeting.
Any questions, comments?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. For the LGA, last year or this year, we had about 35,000 or 148?
No. It was 118, wasn't it? It went up 35,000.
Yeah.
It went up 35, okay.
That, I thought about that too, but it was like 35,
I know, I
went
was
up
like,
$120,000,
okay.
It increased by 35,000.
Okay, by 35, okay, thank you on that one. This, if we go back on the special capital project fund, it said that we were putting in 25,000, is that right? What is that at right now?
I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it's probably around 50,000. We're expecting to be, I'm expecting that fund to go up based on the audit for next year, because I don't think we're gonna have a full spend for 2019, but
I feel like I saw that somewhere in this packet.
it'll be in the financial report.
It is, yeah.
Uh, 59,000.
Is what's in there right now? Okay. And so the 25,000 is coming from what we have as an overage this year into the
No,
next
it's
year?
coming from this balance. I think the balance will grow based on where our revenues and expenditures are at for 2019. Just based on how we're tracking revenues and expenditures.
Okay.
But none of it is guaranteed. The only thing that's guaranteed is the 59,000. So this is taking half of that balance down.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, so 25,000 is not something that is being taxable in this 2020. Like, this isn't part of the tax money that we're taking in from the public going into this fund for next, we're not charging this in the 2020.
Correct. In down. So if you think of the special capital fund, if we, just for like simple numbers, if we budgeted $200 worth of expenditures, but we spent $150,
Mhm.
what we do is we take that $50 and we put it into the special capital
Okay.
fund. And so it rolls that, and so in simple terms, it's a savings account, and so what we're doing is saying, instead of, in order to fund everything in the 20 expenditures, instead of taxing you for all that, we're gonna take 5,000 from the savings account
Okay,
and what we're asking you to pay.
perfect. Okay. The only other comment I had then was for the Lions Park shelter that had been next year's budget. The Lions, because the economy is good and our gambling is good, we have a lot of money. And I was actually just approached by our finance Lions Club and asking if the city had special projects that they were looking for. So if it is something.
Oh, do we?
Yeah, careful, careful. But no, if it's something that it's park, it's something that the city / Brian / we want to pursue for next year, I think that number that we see up there is something that we should definitely talk to the Lions about. And it can probably be done next year.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Any other questions?
There's just one line I had a question on, in the budget,
Page again.
6061. If, and it's in the notes of the miscellaneous general for Southwest Prime and Prime MD, that's 20,000 budgeting 22.
There are other items that come out of there, so it's.
But that's the biggest chunk is Southwest Prime.
Yeah.
That was
All right, any other questions? No? All right. I think we're good, front, thank you. Item number 3, the community park storm on Ms. Smith.
Thank you. On Wednesday night at the Parks meeting, Dan and I held a listening session for the community park pond relocation. In the packet is the mailer that the neighborhood received, as well as a diagram that was sent out that showed the proposed pond location, which you've seen before. Based on the feedback, we had 15 people that were there. I was personally really impressed with how respectful everyone was. We had a really good dialogue. They asked some really thoughtful questions. Did it in a way that was courteous. It was great. So if anyone's watching, thank you.
Aaron, what page in the packet are you on right
2
Thank
or
you.
77.
So we heard quite a bit of feedback about the project. I will say a lot of it was negative at its core. There were some really good questions. Screaming like, this seems to be okay. So largely I would say one in attendance was in favor of the pond location. To it. So talked about that they struggled with was a change in the existing conditions. So people who lived there for a couple months to people who have lived there for 20 years. A little bit of that fear of just not knowing what it would look like. Safety was a really big one. So they recognized that kids run through that quickly. So if all of a sudden there's a new feature that kids don't know about, they could either hurt themselves in the pond, tangled in there. Mosquito control was a big one. Questions about how that's which the city doesn't do in stormwater ponds. Maintenance, there are some questions I think we need to address outside of even this project if people have questions about how that pond is maintained. The pond is a little bit different where in heavy rainfalls and then goes down. Largely like a cattail environment, so people have questions like, why does the water come so high sometimes? Is it supposed to do that? What's it like all the time? So some questions we can address outside of this project. Tree removal was a really big one. So the proposed pond relocation would take out a pretty significant line of evergreen trees as well as a tree, which I think some of us know. So that was tough for most of them. And loss of property. I did a really nice job outlining that. North additional property would be taken, it all would be on park property. Again, just general questions, trying to figure it out. So 15 people were there. They did a really great job. But yeah, we're strongly opposed to the relocation in community park. Do you have to add anything?
No, I would say we got what we were expecting. The people that showed up were the people that basically were
Being
showing
affected.
up, being affected directly, and generally concerns will occur.
Something that
They
was-
came and voiced them, and I would expect that they were quite courteous and respectful given what they were talking about, so.
Something else that was helpful is that people on all sides of the pond were there. It wasn't just High Street, it was all sides of it, which was good to get perspective from everyone in that area, not just a group of residents in a concentrated area.
Churchy and High.
And Guilford.
So we had talked last time, I think we brought this up about reshaping the pond so that it stayed more at the rectangle, I guess, of the park than up into what easements or what appears to people's backyards or what they use as their backyards. Was that alternative shown?
Not shown, and I will say that that's a pretty valuable comment or an item, because one I spent a fair amount of time on, is I probably did not do the best job of explaining and through these figures actually what was going to occur. There was a lot of time spent on trying to explain to folks who lived to the north, because we showed water to the north, it wasn't exactly digging to the north, it just means that's what the water does today. And so I had to go through that exercise of saying, all right, these are your existing high water lines. It was south. Same thing with the east. It was exactly common. It looks like it's getting into the properties to the east, where we basically outlined that that's your high water line, and we're south. And so we did spend a little bit of time talking about the tree losses, though, because there was some substantial tree losses that were outlined right in the path of the pond, which were legitimate losses that would have occurred, and we would have to reshape the pond, as you're saying, to try and minimize some of those. Aaron's point, they had so many different things that they were commenting on, it was hard to hit any one of them. We would say, if this have been a strong need that we were going to proceed with, we'd say, yes, that would be one of the things that we do, is reshape the pond, try and minimize tree losses. And so that was where it was left, is that this was a first take. This is what we would end up with. Based on your comments, these are things that we would walk away from should we proceed, and that would be one.
So when talking to them about reshaping the pond, was there any that changed after that?
Stress levels were reduced. I can put it that way.
Okay. That's good. Well, I'm just saying because we have it we have it kind of the block shape that's right here.
Yeah.
So Lori was talking about, and it's probably hard to see because my screen's
Yeah,
not the right angle,
I see it.
but going this direction. So without being able to visually see that in a map,
Yeah.
do you think you were able to convey to them that that was an option that we had talked about?
Mildly, I think I conveyed pretty clearly that we would have to take another pass to see what we could do to minimize tree impacts, and that would include shaping and grading. I don't think I could get so far as to say this is what it would look like, and so I would say not completely, but I did emphasize that there would be some trees that would be hit, and a minimization effort would occur. But I would say, yeah, there was some stress level that did come down a little bit when I explained that we're not digging into your fence, that's just your existing water. Or basically clarifying what a lot of these folks had feared, which is just this is going on all sides. It's going to be much bigger. So, but they had other comments. Again, the mosquito control, I mean, it doesn't matter where you widen. Yes, you are going to have more water in that area. And I would say one of the other ones, safety, I didn't know how to respond to that because there's other knowledge of water there in the future and the people of it. And so there's a few things that kept coming up. I keyed in on the things, here's what we could actually do. These could try and minimize, and basically reshape things. Aesthetics was another comment that I believe came up to a degree that it was, how's this going to look when it's all done? They're not happy with the looks now, would be bigger than. And so I would say that's really the sense I got. We could mitigate some of it, but not completely calm all the concerns were addressed.
And just to make sure I'm reading this, with the map that you showed them, the trail relocate means that we were talking about trail all the way around.
Yeah, we just explained a little bit to the west effectively.
Did you say all the way around?
Well, it says trail relocate, but I couldn't tell if that was on part of this
No,
mentioning with this black
No,
line.
that black line is more of a high water mark. No, the
No.
trail,
Go to the next slide, and she'll
Yeah.
better. It's 83.
There we go, okay. Okay, now I just sent that little, when I looked at that map, I was like, I'm talking about a trail all the way around. Thank you,
Yeah.
that makes more sense.
Yeah.
So I'm clear, and I think I was in here the day after, and I was really curious about how that meeting went. I know they approached some of my neighbors, and some of my neighbors approached me about it with their concerns. When we talked about making it more of a more narrow but longer pond, folks weren't like, oh, well, that'll be fine. You know, so, you know, I think that to have 15 folks show up, I think they represented at least probably 10 homes. That's really significant, especially for a Parks Board meeting. And it's my understanding that we still have the option to tell the county, go look elsewhere for a place to put this, correct?
You would have to concur with this location as a city park, so yes. So I mean,
Well,
it
what
removes this option from the table if the city would say no.
So I'm still curious about the cost differences between the two, and my concern is that it's gonna be significant. But if all things are equal, and even if there isn't as much of a investment perspective from this, we've gotta start looking elsewhere.
Yeah, what would you say the costs? On the council?
Yeah, when we looked at the two of these, and I'm gonna disclaim this, so this was preliminary scoping, this one was alternative largely because going down County Road 11, the county would be trying to put that pipe in the curb line where it would actually be in the future. In other words, they'd like to put it in where it would actually serve its purpose for the long term for the corridor. And if that got into pavement impacts, going down 11, for example, if you got into a shoulder replacement or something to that nature, then that would drive the cost up a bit higher. And I mean, it was, I think, $1 million numbers. We were talking about 10% maybe as a differentiator.
Between and
Yeah, going down County Road 11 as being, you know, a cost premium. And the other side of this that drove the county towards a request to evaluate this fully is the fact that it is more well aligned with permitting and regulatory goals, because going down 11 doesn't allow you to or hold back the rates. Going that route, there's just no areas for ponding. So effectively, you're going to be permitting through the WMO rate increase with the project, and the treatment will be the best that you can be done, as opposed to this meeting the needs. So that's why I went this direction. The problem for me to get like this definitive answer on cost is because you almost have to kind of preliminarily design each one of them and do the comparison, because you have to find the alignment on 11 where it's going to go and what that impact is to the highway. And for example, the county's right now determining whether or not they pull the limits of County Road 11 up to closer to 6th Street. That would have a substantial impact as to whether or not going down 11 is more or less suitable. If the limits are pulled up, then the only thing going south is the pipe. If the limits are as far south as now, you've already got the entire area ripped up. We're assuming, you'd almost assume no roadway impacts that are new, and it'll all fit in. So there's some trade-offs that go up and down. If the pond earthwork, for example, on the county park were to be beneficial to the project, that actually makes money. If it has to be exported off, there's a cost. And so all these balance points are, you know, being refined as we go. And so it's a little premature for me to say it's really definitive. It's $100,000. It's, you know, what we could do is say at this point in time, apples to apples, these assumptions on the table, this one was a bit less expensive. And so, and that's really where it stands today until we can get some of those questions answered. So
So the County Road 11 piece of property, if we came down 11, we would cut through that county piece of property and across 40 and then into the creek, right? So I'm trying to think of the piece of property the county, there's no place to pond anything there to slow that rate. I think it goes up and then it goes back down, but
yeah, it's kind of a big hill down. There's a little bit. What we did is we put it in this area area that is, the best that I think is reasonable on that parcel to retain and maybe change a little bit, but certainly not to the degree that you would treat it for a holdback rates. It'd almost be just a little stilling basin to try and hold the water back as much as possible because it's going to be screaming down that hill. So it'd be a more slow down. Be actually doing anything for the rate coming off County Road 11 or treating it. But yes, this small area was looked at.
Would this be, back to my question about the price difference, would this be a portion of the project that's split?
The this is a one that varies a bit, but it's a project. It carries development water, and it carries the county road, right? And so the pipe would be covered by a flow split that is determined through the final design of city water and county water. So the pipe would be covered for sure by about the 80-20 that are estimated on city water versus county water. The pond is covered also by 80-20. The caveat is the development water shares the pipe, and we're still working through the agreements on that. So that is kind of a custom negotiation sharing the pipe. The pond is exclusively county road though. So the pond would have nothing to do with development water going through there. That is 100% just the pipe. The pond though would probably be split up somewhere around the tune of 80-20 based on contributing flows.
So the other question that I have, switching from hopefully difficult questions, but is more for you, Erin. So say we don't do the pond here. I know that the parking lot is still in play. How much attention did that get? Was that an issue? Was that discussed?
It was.
From the neighbors?
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit, just from someone at the end saying, what about that parking lot that was proposed there? So with the new Parks Master Plan, the parking lot is not considered an area, just with everything, with ball fields south to the new park south of town. The community park won't have parking. So at this time, master plan is before you like meeting in December. That would replace park plans, which include that parking lot. But that was something that was brought up, and then once we said that wasn't likely going to happen, there was some relief in the room. So I would say the pond and the park would be tough sells for this group right now.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, number questions. There's somebody's got asphalt in the backyard there. Is that our property or is that private?
It's a private.
Private property, okay? Looking at this, is 30 inch going to be sufficient enough? I'm looking at between Reese Scrap and Elm, the ponding area there. Are there any citizens at the meeting from that part of town?
Not that I heard, but did I miss one?
Because they're going to be impacted as well. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Pass through drainage, yeah.
Yes.
Correct.
It would get into that pond and all.
There's going to be substantially more going through there.
Yeah.
If this does go this way, than there is now.
Yeah, that would be more water.
They were specifically contacted.
A reason why they went to show so,
Primary.
no, I guess that's a good.
Look
Yes,
at- if you're going to look at everybody that's going to be affected, it's going to affect there.
Yeah.
Okay. Lori Christie, have you seen this? Walk up and take a look at it.
For which space
The pond area up here.
in the park?
Yes.
Yeah, many times.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with it, but I'm not the Parks Commission.
I saw two. Thanks for asking.
You just look out your window when you're sitting at the computer. And you
Actually,
can
no, you can't see it.
When I looked at it, how deep is that pond proposed?
There's a few questions about that. I mean, I think we were down like about 50 feet or so. I mean, why? What's the? I guess I
Well,
looked
the
at top
basis
to bottom
is
of that.
when I was looking at the grade and how hard it is, the power lines go through versus how far west we can take that. I mean, basically, how much water's gonna be. I don't think there's no standing water in there now.
Upper pond?
Yes.
Yeah, the one we're talking about, white,
Yes.
right? Yeah, I mean, the resident showed me pictures after rain events of this thing bouncing up. I mean, when it rains, it takes this water and it bounces. And then what seems to be happening is there's some soils down there that infiltrate. And so this thing draws back down over time. So when it's dry, it comes back down. You can expect probably a similar behavior. I wouldn't expect the soil to be drastically different. So it's probably going to bounce up, and then slowly down during dry season. So we're dry seasons, this, when it's dry, it's going to bounce back down.
Well, true. Knowing this in particular pretty well, when there is a rain event, water goes away quickly. But that's from what's existing. If we open up this and basically double the size of this and move it west and go down to the depth of where it is over there, water's going to dissipate in there quickly. I don't see a problem with that, with moving it further west. Not the whole thing, but if we take the grade and go down your 15, 20 feet, that's where most of the impact is going to be, and then it's going to get piped out. I don't see it as a big impact at all as far as everybody thinks there's going to be a huge swimming pool in their backyard. I don't see that.
Yeah, the guidance that it can change. It asked Dan to stay away from that area to not impact the T-ball. We can find another spot.
Okay, so if we're going to impact, I don't know, 40 residents or the T-ball fields, what would you rather impact?
T-ball in Lions Park.
There's plenty of T-ball. I mean, they can play right behind the fences in this area. The T-ball area, there's lots of room for the T-ball area. And if something's got to put this in here to keep it somewhat of an affordable pond, the T-ball would say go up to a different spot.
Sure.
And that would be open up a lot larger area. Water will dissipate over that. And if it's going to, if with the third, you got a 42 running in and a 30 running out, I don't see that as a huge impact. There won't be for sea lakes and lakes in there. I'd certainly see a lot of cattails.
I would foresee the comments to be similar. Honestly, with what we heard, these folks probably are not going to stay quiet if there's a pond in that park. And I will say we would probably have resistance, and we would have to say there's enough of a reason to do this that we're just going to justify based on these following public purpose reasons.
Right. So I understand definitely their perspective of, I live here, this is a change, this is going to be very different. When I used to work in Park and Rec here, I'm the one who put that third softball field in, and it was a tough time. Now people don't really realize that it's there any longer. County, that neighborhood's feeling this new project. For me, I hear what Glenn is saying, and I would rather see it, what it looked like reshaped, heading into where that T-ball area is, relocating T-ball to up at Lions Park or a different night or something like that. But on top of that, it's like a twofold. What is the difference in cost? Because if the difference in cost is so significant, running it down 11, that it doesn't make sense, then having a reshaped place here in Community Park might be the best of options, depending on cost. I don't like the way it is now. No, sorry, I don't like that. I see why that's alarming to them. I see why that's alarming. But I think if we can twofold understand what it would look like without and the cost of routing the other way, that would help me make a better decision on my personal feelings going forward.
No, I knew the costs were gonna come up. In fact, before this meeting, I did indicate to the county that, a couple of weeks earlier, I indicated to the county that I thought it might be necessary to actually preliminarily look at the County Road 11 alignment and actually do preliminary cost estimates on it. Because this was, again, planning level costs, high level assumptions. Their preference was to let it run through the public process. And, we knew that we might get some resistance, and we were gonna gauge that resistance and decide from there. But that's what you're asking for, is we would need to actually go to the point and sit down with the county and say, we really need to do a preliminary comparison of these two scenarios and say, all right, we're talking about $78,000 or $80,000 bucks. That we're talking about $150,000, and it's a real difference. Or maybe it ends up costing out to be pretty
Right.
comparable.
And then that's an
And
easier
so,
choice.
if it comes down to it, there's going to be a decision, a threshold decision, in which this is either worth the resistance, or it's not financially sufficient to say it's there's a benefit to this, and so that's really where we stand.
I see here it says connect to existing stormwater up at 6th Street at the Rotary. That's your circle.
The roundabout?
Roundabout, yeah.
Call it what you want.
Generally, the term is roundabout.
Where are you from?
But if you wanted
Where
to-
I thought was in Jersey, they
Minnesota.
call them circles. Just saying. So we're gonna connect part of the stormwater up there in the 6th Street. Realistically, how much of an impact is there gonna be when it runs another quarter mile down? How much of it's gonna be extracted out up at 6th Street and run down 6th Street versus going into the park and going through the other system?
Both options, going through the park and down 11.
No, not down. It
Well,
says right here, connecting to existing stormwater.
oh, well, yeah, both of those do that.
So,
Both options pull it off of 6th Street.
so how much realistic how much of it's gonna be developmental that's gonna run down 6th Street versus developmental running down into the park? Yeah.
The development water from Oak Tree is what you're referring to, that coming across. Yes, that water from Oak Tree into this pipe, the water that's connected to 6th Street,
Yeah.
that water gets redirected into
To?
this pipe system.
No
And
water,
this one.
no water's going down 6th Street.
No,
Okay.
this is all to redirect. Both options pull water off 6th Street because of the drainage issue on 6th Street. So we're taking that water either down 11 or through the park.
Just for some clarity, we're hoping to get from the council, we wanted to create a forum for residents to have feedback on this, get them to a formal council meeting. We had it at the Parks Commission. And if you heard, based on the summary from staff tonight and through your conversations, that the park wasn't an option, then we were gonna tell the county, the council doesn't wanna pursue this, pull it off as an option. It's all in on 11. The other choice is to say, we want to continue talking about this, look at different ways to position it, and we'd like this to come to a regular, so maybe updated costs, new designs, and then take action on either one or the other, and folks to come back. So the two primary choices, but if there's something else you want us to consider, we can do that.
So my vote is that we tell the county that we heard from our residents, and it was very clear that this was not a desirable. We'd like to explore the County Road 11 option. I think not only, is this the county kind of walking all over and using our land, our property as the path of least resistance. It's also something that clearly these residents don't want. They're not going to come back to saying, oh, only 15 feet deep, oh, it's gonna be twice as long but half as wide, well, then I don't have any concern anymore about the items that were outlined in Aaron's memo of change to existing conditions, safety, mosquito, pond maintenance, tree removal, and loss of property. That's
Goes
not
there
gonna,
now. It's
so,
not that much.
but we've heard their concerns.
I
Just
agree.
because they weren't here in front of us.
I don't think that means we're not them, but we've had concerns, we've had 30 people show up above sidewalks in their development too, and that was still consideration and done. So I think that saying, oh, they came and said, no, I'm not discounting their feelings about this at all, which for me, I want to know what that cost is.
To be clear, so do
I
but
can't make an informed decision unless I know what the alternative cost is. If it's $500,000, I'm not saying it's going to be, but if it is, that is a really cost prohibitive project at that point, and that's just more we're tacking. So I'm not saying that for myself that I'm saying, okay, yeah, here and there, I can't make an informed decision unless I know what the side with the other cost is going to be.
Agreed.
And it's sorry to be like hard and stern on this. I just think we went through this in that neighborhood just recently, and things happen. So I think we need to look at both sides before we can really do this.
I,
be clear on numbers too. I just think, you know, from what I hear Dan saying, $100,000 difference. If our is 20% of that, we're at roughly 20 grand. Understanding that we can't hold
Understanding the maybe
to
with
that
that.
number.
Yeah.
And I think we definitely have to take a look at it. But hearing what these folks said,
Okay.
I think it's really important that we, you know, our parkland, the county isn't gonna reimburse us for this parkland. You know, this is something that because of their project, that they're, of course, really support and are partnering with them on, but they're for this and there isn't a reimbursement component to that. So in addition to the neighbors' concerns, I have some concerns about how the county is using our land for this project.
fair. I would prefer to direct the county to look at going straight south down the Carver Parkway. Unfortunate the road isn't now able to handle it, but that's not our issue. We need to protect the park that we have. It makes a difference someday, and then resident. I don't think we find a solution for everyone. Use the park, the ones that live. And the hard thing is, it costs money to figure out how much this would really.
The county is saying, let's go find
Right,
out what
we're-
that
I'd
costs to
rather
get before we go dig into the weeds, and so
I'd rather
that's
just-
where we are today.
move forward, just only the option of going straight down Jonathan. But that's what I would support. Knowing that, yeah, likely cost us more, but we don't know how much. There's probably going to be other things that may be asked for on areas that might cost more, might cost less, and we can't each time stop and take all this time, but always to give us the here. It's like we're spending resources just not. So it's like I just
That's
kind of,
kind of the reality of how it works.
but
it
I think
takes
we
a
just
lot-
gotta move and.
Well,
this is
I
what
want to
would-
see, like, if we move the pond further to the west in the community park, just so we have the same volumes that they're expecting, I'd like to see what type of impact that would have. And I would also like to see the numbers of going down JCP.
But I would want to know what residents feel and regular users of the park before looking at that as an option.
What's it take to get those kind of numbers from the county Road 11?
Well, at this point, we'd have to sit down and talk with them and say, this is what we're dealing with here, and we were gonna take the risk with the idea that there's still an uneasiness about the risks. I mean, there's even risk going into that process, because we come out and say $75,000 difference, is that offset, the risk is not gonna go away. And so, at some point in time, it is gonna come down to the fact that we've found that there's resistance, that's gonna stay consistent. As we move into, you're either gonna go in there and pick a path and justify it based on dollars, because we did that tonight, is because this was considered an alternative. And so they kind of understood that. So we'd be going back and say, is the threshold in which it's cheapest? Yeah, we'd have to, what's it going to take? Those would take probably hours of staff time to try and do a preliminary design. With the biggest challenge down 11 is what the roadway is going to look like. And so we
So it's
try
gonna
to.
cost us 40 hours of time
It's
to
done.
figure it out.
We would ask the county. No, I get WSB to do it under their contract, possibly, but that's all shared money, so it doesn't matter.
What's the figure for that?
You're probably talking about $4,000 to do an estimate on County Road 11 in the future with future pipe. So that might be already in this contract. I don't know if that's out of scope or not, but we did a high level estimate already. Now we're already find that it's more cost of the pond, but now we're asking to hone in, and so you got to dig deeper.
So
No.
tell me again, yeah,
What
you think, you have no idea what the cost would be from County Road 11 to the.
My gut, all the numbers, and my gut reaction is we would be talking in the neighborhood of about $100,000 premium to go to the south. That's what the number
$100,000 to go down 11.
as a
Right,
as
more.
a premium cost on top of this was almost $1 million deal that we were comparing. You know. So that's the best I could offer on the comparison between these two.
Okay.
Does that
A
the
preliminary
water,
design.
what is it? Water rush goes through? The ponding is meant to slow down. Okay. When it's going down JCP or 11, is that to reduce the velocity of the water enough?
It can be designed through a number of different ways to try and slow the water down. There's a number of different structural methods, things like that, to slow the water down. That's what would have to be done. And the factor that we, again, keep saying uncertainty, we had factored in a jacked crossing of Carver. Well, that's really expensive. It's $100,000 just for that one jacked crossing. Jacked crossing means you don't open cut a big pipe through. You take a big piece of equipment and ram it onto the road. You don't do it open cut. That literally is $100,000 on that one item. Now, if the county, if we go down the road and we're going to open cut, we're going to rip the highway, put the ground, and then bury it back up and patch it, which they normally wouldn't let the city do. It's their project. They might actually allow that to happen. So if that were to happen, all of a sudden that number drops by literally almost 100 at one time. That's why I'm saying you have to have all those boxes checked before I come in and say, all right, here's the difference in numbers. Saying that this is what we're trending on a prelim estimate, and if that's the direction it can be found. We have to pre-design each one.
What's the time for construction
2021.
in conjunction with JCP?
And that's what the plan is. You know, if there's a reason otherwise, we asked about it being done at a time, but all those are planned for with the highway.
Can you, I'm sorry, a couple times you talk about going down JC as being where it'll eventually be or where the water needs to be. Into that, or a need for another pipe deal with more runoff when we expand the second phase of JCP from 6th
To the
County
south.
Road 11 Snakes.
Eventually, the county road is going to expand to the south, and with that will come stormwater improvements. And so there will be, but largely county road water, and largely county road improvements.
Right now, they're going to 4th.
Yeah, just
Right, but going is if we eventually need to parallel JCP stormwater, we do that right now.
we're kind of cutting through. We're kind of cutting cutting through a high point, there's a natural break in which that we can dig right through that break, just large, or you can get into the pipe.
Are you
into
meaning
the
the
park.
future? I'm not clear.
Future expanding the, of JCP from 6, kind of phase 2 to
Okay.
County Road 11 snakes over in turn.
Can I clear what you're talking about with it?
Yeah, there'll be roads from that.
Yeah.
And what I'm getting, Dave, correct me, but if you're wrong, but that there will have to be another one of these projects where the water will eventually kind of go down the route of parallel JCP through. Why wouldn't right now doing this?
And then another.
I mean, it's a good question, and that was relevant to this discussion. This is the part to be in the future. Let's just put it in now. That's really what the county's aiming at, is if the road's going to build, let's try and get this pipe in where it's going to be there. Just you have to get a spot, and you have to get it so to serve the road. I can say if the road in the future probably wouldn't be a 42 line all the way down this distance. What you'd have is a small pipe, a 15-inch that starts, starts where we would be turning into the park. It'd be a small pipe going down the road, and it would just be a different stormwater design. It wouldn't be a major trunk line that far down. The beginning of a storm system that starts. It changes how the future would lay out, and they did that would play out. It's a very valid point that the intent is build something that's going to work in the future if it goes that route. So that is very applicable. It's just a different design.
And we could eventually, and most likely, be going that route with another phase of the construction on John.
They will upgrade the storm system to this, and without question, they'd be using this line if they continue building the road to the south. They would be using that, and it would be a smaller pipe in that same area. So.
Okay. Are you clear on?
But yeah, that is certainly one of the concerns, is that this is done so that it's not a big. If we go down a lot, obviously move, and you don't want to have different the region.
Absolutely that, but we're going to head down that way eventually.
Just do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I see what you're saying, because we're going to be adding more homes in the spot where there's already homes, more roads where the spot where there's already there. We're now planned in our plan that's coming up, we're expecting development south of town, right? So then why would we not consider that this road will probably be upgraded, within, I guess I won't make one.
20 years.
I won't make one. How long will this just keep serving, like, forever and ever? I mean, what would it take? Someday you'll have to rip that another. Yeah.
This pipe should be
Going.
This pipe should.
If it went down 11.
This goes in the ground. This should be in the ground for decades and decades. If this is properly, this pipe stays for a long haul.
Going down 11 or going through?
Wherever you
Yes.
put 2 inches in the ground, this should be 50 year design. So.
Seems like you got a split response from us. Give you. I assume not.
What we would tell the county that we basically we'll go to the council and you'd have to take a look at the design. So the only way I'd pull it off and say it's not an option is if you all said, the majority, it's not a vote, you can scrap it. But I think there's some feedback that we can take, some maybe harder costs if that's a possibility, some design options, and then we will probably in this second meeting because the county design engineer WSB have been pushing somewhat significantly to get some feedback because they want to get into the design for the overall project. So we'd be looking for some direct action
help explain why we as a city and Dan is working on this when it's kind of a county project and the county is taking the lead on this?
Yep. So we started off we're gonna do a Jonathan Park stormwater project. The city bonded for to do
Okay.
to kind of take on the development water. We were at the Mueller project.
That's right, okay.
We settled on pipe and we actually bid the project. County Highway stopped. This isn't plans. So we stopped, and then County Highway hired Bolton and Mink to do a stormwater study, the highway water and the development water. So they had two hats here. He's facilitating our side, but he provided stormwater to the county, which the county paid for 100% of that study.
Okay.
But it's complicated now because WSB is the design engineer for the 2021 project, so they're looking for study is completed with the county to inform them on what the plan for the actual project.
Yeah, if it makes any sense, the city and county projects combined, and the county agreed to say, all right, we're ready for this study to analyze how we can do this jointly. Because for a while there, the city with their own pipe, and then there was, hey, there's maybe an opportunity here to be joint, and I think everybody's going to end up better because ultimately you're paying for one pipe instead of two. So he's come up with a way to how partner on this and maybe make it something that he could contribute to. Brent's point, yeah, the city project was going down.
So let's say
And
it was $100,000, and I'm sure we talked about this, but there's been a lot of things going on. Does the county, if we decide to County Road 11, use the number of 100,000 more, does the county have a split in that? If we to go around 11, they're still going to be splitting that with us. What's our portion? Do we?
Estimated. The county may or may not say, we're not choosing the lowest alternative, we want you to pay more. And that's where it just gets into some negotiating between the city and the county. You're likely not going to see, I don't know correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but this is be seen as like the project as a, you're probably not going to likely see like what the city share of this specific part of the project. Or
No, it'll get big into the sewers, so that's why it's a whole storm sewer system
I mean, this
split.
is,
But if we're looking at possibly if it's $20,000 more, really palatable number for me to make that change. If that's not the split, so that they're going to come back and say, oh, you didn't choose the easiest option, which again, as you said, is our parkland, which we're not getting compensated for, which is another. That's a very. If it was 20,000, if we knew it was going to be around that, I would feel very comfortable with that number to go down to 11. I still would like to know what that really vague number is. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be this great study that takes 8 weeks to figure it out. I just need something that we can
hear about it on December.
Right. I just need something I can grab onto to say, okay, that is a ballpark number that I can say, yeah, I'm comfortable with that, or that's just outrageous for this.
I agree with you. It's a tremendous amount of difference for me too. 20 grand or even 40 grand versus.
Cost
Yes,
of
of local,
the
yes.
local cost share, because then we have to get what the final agreements would out in these scenarios. Because again, the pond is a different split than just pipe and stuff.
is that something you can have ready, Dan, or do we need to the 16th? Because we have to notify the residents again.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be a tougher. I think we better sit down and talk to the community, find out whether or not they want to pursue something they know is going to be resisted, in many respects by residents, and it's let's go down. We know we can get it through. We know it's an outlet possible. If we get into on these two alternatives, then we have to come with some numbers that are well defended and rational in all respects. We got to figure out if it's a jacked crossing across the land and not assume something.
And why did they say they would not?
We got to assume that's going to happen with Earthwork.
Why did they say the county say they don't have any reimbursement for us? I guess for using parkland.
it's been their, I don't know if it's policy, but certainly practice where they haven't paid another city or government agency for property that's already owned by the agency.
Yeah, but they also did it first with our TIF financing for fleet.
I'm not following.
Didn't they, there was a TIF that was designed and the county was reimbursed some money out of that too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that doesn't involve.
So it's not for the county to make exceptions to the rules. Is where I'm going with it.
Yeah, all things that I guess I'd have to work out as to what they'd be putting to the table on any option. So I'd have to really get into the weeds on all of our assumptions. So that being said, I wish it was an easier one. I mean, most of the time when we get to the end of an evaluation, because we evaluated like 6 or 7 different alternatives, if we have a really strong lead, we would, present it as such. And so there's going to be resisted, but there's all kinds of reasons, cost, lots of other rationale this is necessary. We have 2 leading options. That's what makes this one difficult. Is our 2 leading options. We have what comes down to the preferred alternative and a lot of variables and costs that led us to where. And so it doesn't put you in a great position, but that's really the reality. So we'll have to regroup and say, fill in a couple of these blanks for you, and with a little more of a definitive, position on what might make sense here. That would be helpful to get together to actually break this apart.
All the neighbors will notice for that again.
And that'll be at a regular meeting though.
And we'll find out if the county wants to pursue it. They could just turn back and say, let's not. It's going to be risky.
So I have a couple of dates.
Yes, go.
As it relates to the water treatment plant, we spent a lot of time talking about the previous. The last for staff and look at alternatives and things that are really keen on, rather than developing a water treatment plant on a greenfield or kind of raw land in addition to the existing water treatment plant. And so we feel like we can save some significant dollars, we're estimating at least $3 million on the plant, plus because you at the existing things that wouldn't happen that can be incorporated in. And so we're working on bringing the details of that plan in essence to December 2nd session. We can go over that, and then if you're okay with moving forward with the concept of that expansion, what would be a new capital plan over to Abdo, Steve McDonald, and have them repopulate what the rates and connection fee impacts would be. And with the timing of that, what we would plan is allow you to kind of flush that expansion concept and the rates. What we should do is, in essence, the idea of increasing connection fee until we can get a handle of what we want to do and how much it would cost and what the impact would be, rather than a rush all done at the end of the year. Just wanted to check in and make sure that process was okay with the council.
Yes.
So we wouldn't plan on any rate increases, and kind of got everything figured out here. We provided direction. Okay. Then I asked Erin if she could do 2 minutes on Mueller. It's not really a issue, but they're planning or at the county for an interim use permit as it relates to an operation. And so I just have an FYI.
So I'm gonna give you some facts about it. So right now it's called the Lundquist mine. It's the mine that they're considering mining on. So right now it's an ag township. The Carver County zoning code does allow for mining with an interim use permit. So tomorrow night they're holding a public hearing on that interim use permit. The application calls out location for 15 to 20 years. The county board is able to set the date for when the interim permit needs to be reviewed or either needs to be revoked. The decision will likely be made tomorrow to say this land can be mined for 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. Something interesting about this project is recognize that the current Mueller site with the amount of development is on and off 40. Some of the extraction, processing activity, and sales will move from the Carver site to the Lundquist line. There will be less traffic, less vehicles traded currently in Carver, more to this location of town. They have a pretty extensive berming plan around the site, and the site is capped at 35 acres. So in total, the site is about 110, 30 of it for production. So again, just fast accessing tomorrow at the county if anyone's interested. I know there was some information about Carver Life, so I would direct anyone who's interested to check out the county's packet. A lot more information about it.
The Carver Mueller site is? I'm just curious what 35 compares to, because officially I.
Total site is 276 acres.
Mentioned the 110 acres, but 35 mining. Is
So
it just
the entire site is not large.
municipality 110?
That's a regular meeting
Only use 35, like is it part of the
It's part of the current
practices.
percentage
Oh.
thing or
Nope,
just sure?
it's acres. That's their max.
Thank you.
Yep.
We good? Good.
Yeah, some community.
And now that I just computer. Looking for that, saying that I just want to talk for the assessment hearing process. What I would like to do for
Is it on the agenda for tonight?
Yeah.
We shouldn't talk about that session, we should talk about.
that's fine.
Sorry.
No, that's totally.
Channeling Larry here. Sorry.
No problem, Larry. We're good. Larry, we got it.
Do that at the regular meeting.
This will take me seconds now. So I was approached by a couple of people from the Humane Society of the United States. They had passed in Eden Prairie, and they're going to come to our next meeting just after what's that section? Presentations, and take a few minutes of our time to talk about pet services. And all this is to ultimately help out in puppy mills and eliminating the sale of dogs and cats that puppy regulated.
You mean stores?
Humane pet store ordinance is what it's
We don't have any pet stores.
but we could. So they just wanted to come and talk about, like, if this does not affect little breeders at PetSmart or Pet or anything like that. But it's part of the Humane Society, and they wanted to talk just a little bit about what that's like with humane pet.
I'm fine with that. That sounds like
Regular meeting.
a regular meeting. Okay, yeah, I'm fine with that. And
Sorry,
I'm
I'm really.
sit on
No, that's why I was that's out. So
objection. Hearing none. Let's have the next meeting. Or we've got a lot of
As a
stuff
schedule.
and talk to their folks.
We're fine.
Okay, good.
With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilmember Mock.
I'll
Second by Councilmember